Alright, here we are at the final area in the game, the Temple of the Frog. And as I'm sure you've memorized by now, we need 50 coins to get into this place. Now, I've never actually seen what happens if you don't have 50 coins, but apparently this guy assumes that we've been here before and we have been rejected for lacking 50 coins, but it's difficult not to have 50 coins by this point, so I don't even know what he's talking about. So, Temple of the Frog, as per usual, some pretty good music. And just like the last few stages, it has some pretty tricky sections. Of course, some of the trickiest in the game, but overall, not really that bad. Nothing you shouldn't be able to handle after a few tries. In fact, in all honesty, I think one of the hardest segments in this entire area is probably pretty early on in this stage, and it actually involves that slug thing over there. Yeah, those things, despite the fact that they're relatively slow-moving, are probably some of the more difficult enemies to avoid in this area just because of the way they're set up. And these guys apparently have terrible hitboxes because I swear I just went through his head, but then again, he is a ghost, so who knows. Okay, this is what I was talking about. This section, kinda difficult if you're impatient. They might be slow-moving, but there are a lot of them, and if you get yourself stuck, well, you're probably gonna get hit and die. And for some reason over here we have a gigantic F. I don't know why. Maybe it's just... maybe it stands for frog and they built it here for some reason, or maybe Mr. D put it in here. I guess it could stand for failure, and maybe he was trying to damage Frogger psychologically somehow. However, given Frogger probably can't really see said F, it really isn't that effective. I mean, I can see it, but, you know, that's because I've got a bird's eye view on this whole thing. Also, something very common in this final level here, there are a few switches, actually, and they all do different things. Woo? Yeah, that's this area's gimmick. There are a bunch of switches, like that one over there. What will that one do? Oh man, the last one made a circle platform move, and this one made a square platform move. Oh man, these frogs, the most technologically advanced creatures in the world. Also notice that we still do have to collect elements, and this time we're collecting the elements of the frogs, because, of course, frogs are the most important elements in nature. And I don't even want to hear you say something about frogs not being elements. Just because they're not included, you know, in fire, earth, yada yada yada, all that. You know, that doesn't mean they can't be elements. After all, frogs are naturally occurring. You go out in a swamp and you'll find a frog, probably. You can find them in nature, therefore they are elements. My logic is flawless. Although, these elements are actually kind of few and far between, so it does take a little while to collect them, although honestly they're not really out of the way, so while you might miss a few elements in the first stages if you're not paying complete attention, you're probably going to see all these, you know, without passing them up. That shouldn't be a problem. And actually, we're almost near the end of the stage already, so what I just said was apparently a lie. Apparently they're not that few and far between. So we're just going to grab this and go to the sparkly exit, and yep, that's the first stage of the final area done. So let's move on. Alright, so starting off the next area, and oh my god, what a twist! We needed 50 coins for both stages, which actually isn't... that's not a problem in the slightest, because I still had more than enough way before this last area even happened. And with the last threats of Frogger about doing terrible things to death himself, we start off the final area in the game, which isn't really that difficult either, and this song, I like this song, but at the same time, I can't quite decide if I like it more or less than the previous stage's song. And also, man, those slugs are really booking it. I guess they didn't appreciate being called slow. So, Temple of the Frog doesn't really have any sort of big gimmicks to it. I mean, I guess it introduces these, pinball traps, I guess? Sure, well, let's just go with it. I mean, I guess I'm not a frog, so I don't really understand frog traps or frog architectural design, so I'll just roll with it. But they're really not too bad, except this one. This one can be a little tricky to avoid just because of their placement is, well, kind of tricky. Anyway, oh look, there's a rock just there. I'm sure it won't bother. Oh crap, it's a sentient rock, I should have known. Oh well, unless you were caught by surprise by that somehow, you really shouldn't be killed right there. And yeah, that was a switch puzzle, I guess. You had to shoot marbles at a spinny thing that I can't even guess what it actually is, but whatever, let's just keep on moving on. And finally, these enemies are reintroduced. They were in the beginning of the last stage, but we sort of just walked on by them. Actually, we hopped on by them, technically. I think you can actually go right or left here, it doesn't really matter. I usually go down the left and I don't miss anything, so I assume that's just, you know, a branching path thing. This area is not really too bad, though. Going for the coins kind of puts me in a bit of a risky position, but nothing too bad. Just had to press this switch over here and some platforms will start moving. Nothing too bad, just make sure... Yeah, you'll get stuck on the edges of these platforms, so just make sure to press left when you get to them. Though really, you have plenty of time to actually notice that since the platforms aren't actually moving that fast, so I guess that's kind of nice. Also, I just realized, those slugs are about as slow as these ghosts, or vice versa. That's kinda sad for these ghosts. Seriously guys, you can go faster. Also, wow, is it just me or does that animation just look kind of dumb? I mean, if they're coming towards you, they're trying to give you a hug, but if they're going side to side, they're just like, they're moving their arm. Are they trying to karate chop someone or something? I don't get it. Ah well, anyway, this section definitely isn't tricky at all, just don't stand on platforms, and there are absolutely no obstacles to actually stop you from, you know, moving and not standing on platforms like an idiot, and that's the end of the stage, so that's the final level done, and now we move on to the last boss. Well, I can't say it was a long ride or a particularly difficult one, but regardless, we're at the end of it, and now we must fight Death. So, Death here actually has two forms. You do get a checkpoint in between... Whoa! Anyway, you do get a checkpoint in between them, though. This first form is actually pretty difficult. Basically, it's one long endurance run, and you have to avoid certain attacks based off the elements that you've been collecting throughout the game, except for the frog element, because I guess Death really hates frogs. So, once he finishes attacks, these elements will start appearing, and you have to grab as many of them as possible. Now, I'm pretty sure it's not possible to actually collect all of them in one go, so usually you'll be seeing his attacks twice. I mean, I've never gotten them all in one go. It could be possible, but I don't think you can really be fast enough, so just do your best to avoid everything. This one's not too bad, just be very careful of where you're moving. The fire doesn't move too fast, thankfully, so you should be able to avoid it. Now, this next one can be tricky. So, you're on top of flippy panels, however, some panels will automatically start flipping on their own. First, it'll go horizontally, then they'll start moving vertically. And after this is done, they'll move in both directions, right? One will go right and one will go down. And after that, you finally get your chance to collect the earth elements. I'd say this is probably the most difficult section of this fight to actually deal with, due to the fact that that last flippy platform section is actually pretty difficult to avoid if you're in the wrong position. Like, if you don't position yourself correctly, you could really end up screwing yourself over. But just as long as, again, you're careful, you should be good. And now we move on to water, or in this case, ice. I guess he just decided to freeze it to be creative. Now, these don't move that fast. They move faster than the fire, and their movement's very smooth, so it's definitely a bit more difficult to avoid, so be very careful here. Make sure... don't stay near the end of the screen, obviously, but don't stay, you know, just in the middle of everything. Otherwise, you're gonna get sliced up and it'll suck. Basically, just move as something comes to you. That's pretty much all you need to do, and you should be good. Just be very careful. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't noticed by now, the patterns for each of his attacks are actually the same every time. So, basically, you dodge it once, and you might screw up the second time. It's entirely possible, but you know what to expect the second time. Now here, this is just like the fire and ice attacks, except they move... Actually, these move about as fast as the icicles, but you don't have the outside to really avoid things in, and actually, no, these might be a little faster than the icicles. These can be a bit tricky to avoid, but again, it's not too bad. Mostly a lot of this, the reason this fight is so difficult is just due to the fact that you have to do all of this in one go, and of course, if you slip up once, that's the end of you and you have to do it again, so... Basically, all the difficulty comes from the fact that this is an endurance run, but really it's not so bad. Of course, this one also does last for a while, so that could contribute to it being kinda difficult. So, with that done, we move on to the final portion of this fight, where we actually have to use the elements to hit him, sort of. Alright, so basically he's going to follow you around. You have to press these panels. They'll turn into a certain design, and you have to wait for him, and the panels will change around. Basically, you have to trap him. So once you do that, you'll hit him. Now, Mr. D rather, can be kind of difficult. Like, he can be a bit intelligent. If you press the switch too soon, he will actually avoid the dangerous panels. But still, you do have a bit of leniency, so don't think you have to just get him exactly when he's on the panel. And just one more hit will do him in. This isn't really too bad. Just like the other times, as long as you don't screw up, you're good. We never see Mr. D ever again. And here's the ending, which is really terrible because it's just all the dumb characters we've met being all like, "Oh, Frogger, you sure are great," as you stare at the player's soul. He doesn't stop staring. Oh god, they're all looking at me. I feel cold. Okay, Frogger, if you start seeing fairies that no one else can see, you should probably be worried. And on that note, Temple of the Frog is finished. It's not really that bad a platformer, but it's not that good. It's very middle of the road, but it's decent. Had I not shown you the entire thing, I would maybe recommend it. You can blow through it in an afternoon, no problem, even if you're new to the game. But it's not a bad game. It's definitely got some decent music. It's just some of the design is dumb. The animation can be pretty bad, but as far as I know, I think the sequel to this, I think it's Lost Wand, actually improves most of that, of pretty much everything that was wrong with this game. Of course, I haven't played it since I was a kid, so I could be completely wrong about that. However, there are, if I remember correctly, there are less dumb characters that they just shove in, so writing does not make me want to punch myself in the face in that game, so that's good. But, yeah, these credits are short because, surprise, surprise, not a very big design team, so I've been Feftermoss I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. And what the hell is with that picture of Frogger? He looks weird.